welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary and today's video is going to be about all of my favorite book settings of all time. Sorry if you can hear my dog walking around, he's trying to get comfortable. Is that a good spot for you to lay down? Well, over the years, the last few years especially, I used Cawpile for a while, which is how I sort of came to know that atmosphere was really important to me in books. But I've also come to terms with things that I am always, when I hear a certain setting or a certain like time of year or type of thing, there are certain things that really draw me in, and there are certain things that when I reflect on my reading, I really like that are based in setting. I think I am one of those readers who really enjoys a setting of a book and an atmosphere of a book, and I can really get down with a book that is all vibes, so long as the vibes are immaculate. So that's what I'm going to be exploring in this video. Today, I'm just going to be going through a few of the books that I've read over the past few years. Some of these like categories, if you will have multiple books or multiple series that fit into them. But yeah, that is the gist, and I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. The first setting that I find myself really enjoying is, this is a very particular thing, and I have two examples of it, but it is a space that is sort of in the countryside, although it doesn't have to be. It usually just requires a large parcel of land and a family living on the parcel of land. So the first book that I noticed I really liked this with was Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. The cottage in that book, so the premise of that book is that these three sisters, I think it's three, but them and their mother have to move out of their like family home because their father has died and left the home to his son. And so his son and his wife are gonna live there. And the girls move out to the countryside. I don't remember how they end up getting this arrangement, but they find a house that they can live in. So it's a much smaller space for all of them, but they're all moving to this small countryside house, and then it follows their lives from there. And particularly it follows the two older daughters as they start like dating and trying to find, not dating, as they start being courted and like being interested in the idea of maybe getting married, because Jane Austen writes marriage plots, if you are not aware. I really loved the way that Sense and Sensibility tackled like the family dynamics in that way, and there's something so like cozy to me as a person who does not live anywhere near any of my family about living really close to your family. The other series that I really enjoy for this same dynamic type of thing is the Firefly Junction Cozy Mystery series by London Lovett. And I have not loved any of these books individually, but truly the vibes are there. So this basically follows Sunny, who is 35, I think, at the start of the first book, and she wanted to be a reporter, but her sisters had moved to the small town called Firefly Junction in the Smoky Mountains, and they have a triangular tract of land, right? And so on one end of the land is a dilapidated old hotel, not Airbnb, a bed and breakfast, that Sunny moves back to fix up this bed and breakfast to like its former glory, if you will. And then the other sisters, one sister has an event planning business, and the other one has a farm, I think. I always get mixed up because there's like, one of the ladies has like chickens and horses, and one of them loves to bake. I think it's the one who has the chickens and horses who likes to bake. And then the other one runs an event planning business, and I think she's married with kids, or the other one is, I don't remember which sister is married with kids. See, I'm not very good at like keeping up with the plots of these books, but something about the idea. What I love about this in theory is at any point they can just like walk across the land, like grass, and knock on someone's door. And I just think there's something very like whimsical, and just, it's very small town, but in like the most, not aesthetically pleasing way, but kind of, if that makes sense. So the next setting that really works for me, I only have one example of, but it worked so well for me, and I was shocked by that, and that's The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. The way that the circus pops up randomly or seemingly overnight with no notice, it's just there one day and then it's gone. Something about that was so like magical and whimsical. And then the way that Erin Morgenstern described the individual like displays, because if you don't know what the Night Circus is, I'll try to explain it in the best way that I can. I don't think you can really spoil it, because frankly, I don't remember what happens in it. It's one of those all vibes, very little plot books. But the gist of it is, there are two magicians who each take an apprentice, and the apprentices, when they're taken, don't realize that they're being taught competitive schools of magic or schools of thought on how magic should work. and later in life they're going to be pinned against each other. And so the Night Circus is the setting of their battle, but they're not actually fighting each other. They're just trying to make cooler and cooler magic and illusions than the other person. So every time you go to this Night Circus, it's different too, because sometimes one of them will have made like a winter fort, and so things are like literally built out of snow. It's like, it's magic. It's actual magic. So, but when you're a guest there, you see it and you think, oh my gosh, this is just like magic, because you don't realize that it's actually magic. So I want to reread that book at some point, because I know I'm doing a really terrible job of explaining what it's about, but truly the setting in that book was so immersive and magical and wonderful and fantastic, and I could have read like probably 300 times the amount of different displays that they had of their like magic. Like I could have just read that over and over and over again. The next two that I have are vastly different from one another, but I like them both, so I'm going to talk about them both. One is, I really want to read more closed circle mysteries, but particularly snowed in stories. So I read One by One by Ruth Ware. I've actually read it twice now because I reread it. That's how much I enjoyed this book. And the second time I read it, I wanted to see if I could like figure it out faster. But what I really like about One by One is, because it is a mystery and not a thriller, part of the enjoyment of it is that when you find out who it is, like it's slowly revealed to you who is doing the killing of the people. Premise of One by One, I'm terrible at doing this. Premise of One by One is, it's a closed circle mystery where a group of coworkers goes to this chalet in France, and one of them dies when they're all off skiing, and they find out that it was a murder because every time someone finds out a little bit more about what happened, that person ends up dead. So one by one, the people are dying, and they don't know, they're trapped in there with a murderer basically, but they don't know who it is. So as you find out who that person is, there's just this tension building, because you get multiple perspectives in this book. And so you get the perspective of a person finding out who the killer is, and just reading them trying to like not tip off that they know is very interesting. So anytime that happened, it's just, there's something about it that's really tense. But the reason I love this book is because I really do feel like the snow and the ice, and then just the idea that like the stakes are really high, because not only might you get murdered by this person, but if no one comes to rescue you, you might run out of food. Who knows how long this is going to take? There might be another avalanche that completely wipes out your place, because I think that's what happens. There's an avalanche, and so it cuts off their access to the main part of whatever. And I think it also like destroys part of the property, but not the part that they're living on. Regardless, it's just really, really high stakes because it's so deadly. So I thought that was a fantastic read. I want to read more books that have an antagonist that is just nature, because I think that's a very, very interesting concept, and that leads me into my next one, which is books about the Australian outback. I have read two, and they're not about the Australian outback, they're set there. The first that I read was The Lost Man by Jane Harper, which is a mystery thriller about, I don't remember, it's like a family drama mystery thriller. I really enjoyed this book. It's very slow paced. I would say it's more like a mystery than it is like a thriller, and there are some like twists and turns, but it's all like family drama twists and turns. So it's not like anything too crazy, but it definitely is a little something something, if you will. But it's set in the Australian outback, and one of the big things that's focused on in this book is the fact that these men live out here, and they always have their Jeeps with like extra tires in case they run out of they get a flat tire. They always have like full coolers in the back with tons of water and food, because if you get stuck out in the desert, you'll die. Because the like wilderness was not safe, it really like upped the stakes for me in a big way. That I think part of it too is that I've never lived in a desert. I've never lived somewhere where it snows a lot. So those things are genuinely terrifying to me. Whereas like tornadoes are scary, but I grew up with tornadoes happening. I hope that makes sense and doesn't just sound like very insensitive. The other book that I've read that has the same like Australian outback setting is, did I say Australian weird just now? I can't tell. Is Stolen by Lucy Christopher, which is about a girl who gets kidnapped at an airport and taken to Australia by a man who has been stalking her. And this book is really interesting in a lot of ways. I heard someone describe that you will only like it if you are kind of rooting for them as a couple, and like you're getting Stockholm syndromed while reading this book the same way that she is. And if that doesn't happen for you, you will not understand the book and you'll think it's dumb. And I agree with that, because the whole time I was reading it, I was like, do I want this to be a romantic thing? No, but like the way it's like building up in that same way, which is strange. But this one, again, he takes her to the Australian outback, and one of the big things that he warns her about is like, these snakes are all poisonous. Like, we're in the middle of the desert. You can't get anywhere without me. You will die. Something about that added element is terrifying. The last type of setting that I want to talk about, I feel like is really broad, and a lot of people really like this, so it's probably going to be a little annoying. And this actually might end up being more of like a trope thing. I really like things like Nevermore, The Trials of Morgan Crow. Nevermore as a like fantasy world. In the hotel that Morgan ends up going to live in, the chandelier fell off at one point and starts regrowing as another like being, and it doesn't just grow into a chandelier, it grows into a chandelier that's shaped like something. And I think that's very interesting, something about that. And then also the setting in Amari and the Night Brothers and Amari and the Great Game, where it is like not a magic school, but a magical, like, I think that's called supernatural instead of magical, but it's kind of like the FBI, or think like Men in Black, except for it's not just aliens. I think there are aliens, but it's like a lot of other magical things as well. And so Amari goes to summer camp and to learn about the magical world, because her brother went missing in the first book, or before the first book, and she wants to find him, and he gives her clues that lead her to this magical society. Basically, that's the gist of like the setup for the books. And something, like, I love a magic school too, don't get me wrong. But that hasn't worked for me as well in recent years. Like, I feel like so many people have done that I've seen it work sometimes and not work other times. What I'm talking about is this setting where it's not necessarily a magic school, but it's specifically like children who did not grow up knowing that magic was a thing, being thrust into these like very magical situations that I really like. And that, again, might be more of a trope and less of a setting, because in my head, Nevermore and the like Bureau of Supernatural Investigations were similar, but now that I'm talking about it out loud, I don't know if they're similar enough. So I don't know. These are some of my favorite book settings. I'm sure as I read more, I will discover other settings and tropes and settings that I like. Let me know in the comments down below what your all-time favorite book setting is. Also, let me know if you have any recommendations for me based on these settings, because since I like things that are set here, that's one less thing that the book has to accomplish in the writing for me to enjoy it. This is where I'm going to leave you, but thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it to this point, don't forget to like it if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more videos from me, because I do try to post 2 videos every week, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!